Trump versus Merkel. A psychological analysis of their opposite personalities. Hi, my name is Gijsbert Stoet. I'm a professor of psychology and I'm also very interested in what goes on in politics. Politics is not just about power and policy, it's also about the personalities of the people in charge. How they act depends very much on their personality. Right now, Donald Trump and Angela Merkel are two of the most influential world leaders. Trump as the leader of the free world and Merkel as the leader of Europe's economic powerhouse, Germany. This is a good time to talk about them. Trump is at the end of his presidency and Merkel will stop in 2021. They are both fascinating people from a psychological point of view. I chose to talk about them because Merkel is completely the opposite of Trump. Of course, Trump is a man and Merkel is a woman. Trump was a newcomer to politics and immediately became president, whereas Merkel is a career politician who built her career over a lifetime gradually. Trump often uses humor as a tool and is often light touch, whereas Merkel is diplomatic and serious. Trump rarely appears emphatic, whereas Merkel actually does. Trump reached the summit quickly, but also had to leave after one term, whereas most presidents stay on for 2 terms. Merkel, on the other hand, reached the summit gradually and then stayed at the top for in total 4 terms. Now, whether you like Trump or do not like him, he is a fascinating person. And I also think that it is this fascination that helped him to capture the attention from the public and the media, which helped him to reach the summit so rapidly. Merkel is fascinating too, but in a very different way. In this video, I will not just compare Trump and Merkel, but I also want to show you why I believe that Trump's personality helped him to reach the summit of power rapidly, but it also was his personality rather than his actual policies that ended his career after 1 term. Now let's dive into that topic. Here is my take on it as a professional psychologist. Let us start with Trump. Let's first look at why we know so much about him. Before he became president, he was already a US celebrity for many years as a business leader and as a popular TV host. So we have many years of video clips and they can tell us quite a bit. Of course, there are also the books about him, for example, the book by his niece Mary Trump. Using this information, I've looked at a number of outstanding, like character traits such as aggressiveness, narcissism, but also his style of humor and his much discussed level of intelligence. Let's start with aggression. From a psychologist's point of view, aggression is not necessarily a bad thing. It is simply a character trait. Aggression is part and parcel of natural human behavior. Some people will show more aggression than others. It can be beneficial. You need aggression to survive in a world in which you can be attacked by others, or in a world in which it really pays off to be dominant. You may have seen this video clip here that I will show you of Trump at a NATO summit where he seems to push himself past some of the other less important world leaders. It really suggests a domineering personality. An aggressive personality is characterized by hostility, by showing irritation, by being outspoken when disagreeing with other people, by resorting to violence when it suits one. One can argue that Trump is, at the very least, verbally aggressive. One sees this clearly in how he talks about others. It is full-on confrontational. And Mary Trump, his niece, wrote that when Trump was 13 years old, as a teenager, she wrote, Donald's misbehavior, fighting, bullying, arguing with teachers had gone too far. Trump will not be the only world leader like that. But one of the things where he's very different from other democratic world leaders is his aggressive verbal talk to journalists. This became obvious in the many press conferences we have seen over the year.
Nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
Trump has often been criticized for his aggression. Being aggressive to the press does not seem to fit well with the traditions democratic countries have. On the other hand, aggression in a leader communicates strength and power. At least for those voters who want a strong leader, a strong man who can defend himself and defend the nation, that can be attractive. He actually has argued for withdrawing troops from other countries, and while many people at the beginning of his presidency were worried about Trump as commander-in-chief, so far it has been peaceful, unless I have missed something important there, but it seemed peaceful, and he has actively intervened in preventing a war in North Korea, and he has worked on improving peace in the Middle East. Compare that with his predecessors. You could argue he is actually not aggressive at all, even though he is when talking to the press, for example, or talking about his opponents. If you look at it like that, you could possibly argue that Trump's aggressiveness is purely theater, while he is actually much more mellow in the inside. And that is quite interesting, because that's exactly what he has himself said in a 1985 interview in which the interviewer asked him why he was being called vicious. So watch this short clip.
That perhaps I'm portrayed differently than I actually am. I believe I'm portrayed in a rougher sense than the actual product. And I hope that's true, because I hope the actual product is a lot more mellow than the portrayal.
So we need to be careful with describing him as a purely aggressive person. He shows aspects of aggression, but he might just put this on as an aggressive mask to dominate. Apart from the alleged aggressiveness, Trump has become known for his narcissism. And I quote from an article by Rashkin and Terry, who define narcissism. They write, the narcissistic personality is defined by the following clinical criteria, and I choose here some of those criteria that they list that might match Trump. Just see what you think. A grandiose sense of self-importance or uniqueness. An inability to tolerate criticism. The indifference of others. Entitlement or the expectation of special favors without assuming reciprocal responsibilities. Relationships that alternate between extremes of over-idealization and devaluation. And a lack of empathy. Now, I would say this actually matches quite a few things we have seen in Trump. For example, Trump has described himself as an exceptional president. He described himself as the best president for African Americans since Lincoln.
Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done.
Trump does not tolerate criticism well, which is why so many of his closest advisors had to be replaced and why he attacks the media often. He does not show much empathy towards victims of the pandemic. Now, again, I mean, you could say, okay, that's not necessary for a president, but you see that other world leaders, such as Merkel, get very emotional about speaking about the consequences of the pandemic. Further, Trump expects special favors, for example, expecting the Supreme Court to help him to overturn election results, even though there is no reason for them to do so. And then in terms of international relationships, you know, some of them fluctuate between extremes, such as on the one, you know, at one time he talks about the Korean leader as Rocket Man, and at another time he says, we fell in love.
I was really being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love. Okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters.
So you could argue that his narcissist traits are more clearly expressed in his behavior than aggressiveness, because his aggressiveness at least has not, you know, is maybe purely verbal, but is not expressed, for example, in warfare, even though he has the power to go to war. Now, in terms of the narcissism, we also should ask ourselves the question whether it's a bad thing in a leader. There's certainly a dark side to narcissism, but it has benefits for leaders. A narcissist leader might get things done because of their unrelentless belief in themselves. Michael Maccabee wrote about this in Harvard Business Review, and he said there's something called productive narcissists. They are not only risk takers willing to get the job done, but they are also charmers who can convert the masses with their rhetoric. And you know, the argument there is if you can convince many people with your charm, then you know that helps. Now, we've seen, of course, with Trump that in the end, the election, he didn't win the election, but you know, you could argue it was narrow. There are many voters who really like him. Now, let's look at Trump's style of humor. We see Trump using humor a lot. He often uses so-called aggressive humor. We all remember his description of his opponents Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden as Crooked Hillary and Sleepy Joe.
The unemployment rate in the great state of Ohio. No, you're in South Carolina. Joe, you're in South. They come up and you ever see the guy that no, it's South Carolina. It's not Ohio. Okay. Then he goes, all right, Iowa. Did you say Iowa? No. I did that like 7 times. If I did that once, it would be the end of the road, right? Be the end of the road. They'd say Trump has lost it. They like to say that anyway, I guess. Huh? These people are bad people. Oh, Sleepy Joe. Well, he's running tomorrow.
And he also sometimes makes jokes about himself. Now, of course, hardcore opponents will not find him funny, but that is a different matter. I think what matters here, from a psychological point of view, is that Trump is able to often use humor when speaking. That makes him easy to listen to. People might find him more charming or more approachable because of it. And that may be because you know, the average person would rather hang out with somebody who can crack jokes than someone who is always serious and never makes a joke. I think that humor has given Trump a major advantage in his 2016 election. Not only when competing against Clinton, but also in the primaries when competing against Republicans such as Jeb Bush. Now, finally, let's look at something that Trump himself has often commented on: his level of intelligence.
Respect for Donald Trump and for Donald Trump's very, very large brain.
Intelligence and cognitive abilities are measured by psychologists in different ways than the many personality traits that we have talked about before, such as aggressiveness or narcissism. It's actually much easier to judge if somebody is a narcissist or whether somebody is outgoing than to judge how intelligent someone exactly is. Researchers have tried, but I think it remains guesswork unless you have really hard evidence. Trump himself has often said that he's a smart guy who went to the best colleges, that he has good grades, but we cannot simply take his word for it. This especially because he has ensured that his school grades won't be made public, and he has threatened colleges over any disclosure of his grades. So that together, all we know basically is that he went to university. He has a degree in economics, so he might be super smart, but we simply don't know. And I think that is where he and Merkel differ, because she was clearly an outstanding school student. She was the best in mathematics. She has a degree in physics, which is very obviously a difficult university topic to study. So what we can do with Trump is try to come up with a very indirect analysis of his intelligence. The fact that he reached the top of U.S. government in a short time, despite having no background in politics, suggests that he has the ability to make good decisions again and again and again, because there will be many obstacles on that road, and there will be many very capable opponents. Only by making the right decision again and again one can reach such a position, and that suggests to me that he has the capability of taking many different types of information into account and making the right decisions based on the information that comes in. It cannot, or I would say it's hard to just explain that by being aggressive, by being dominant, by being outgoing and being humorous, even though those things of course are really important as well. But I think if he would have made many stupid decisions, then at some point on his road to the summit, he would just have stumbled. But he clearly didn't. So that suggests that I would argue that suggests that he is clever. Now let's look at Angela Merkel, who is completely the opposite of Trump. If you're not a German, you might have seen her, but you might not know much about her. Merkel is clearly a smart person, very smart. For example, she was apparently the best in mathematics in her class. She learned Russian fluently, and Russian is a very difficult language. She graduated in physics at university, and physics is clearly a difficult university topic to study. So these things together show that she is very smart. Again, we cannot put a precise number on it, but she must be, I would say, pretty smart. Apart from her intelligence, her outstanding psychological traits are probably her modesty, her self-discipline, her excellent levels of preparation for meetings, and her friendliness. Her modesty can be seen in the fact that she is not a glamorous person, despite the fact that she could be, given her power and her position. But it seems she wants to be modest. It is part of her personality. When she goes on holidays, her holidays are modest. She does not have her own plane, and the one that she is flying in is is outdated. Again, this could be different, given that Germany is such a powerful and rich industrial nation. If she wanted to have her own super plane, I'm sure they would give it to her, but it's not the sort of thing that seems important to her. I think that it is this modesty that German voters find attractive. They have, re-elected her again and again. I would say modest Merkel communicates to the public that she is not in it for the money and not for the wealth, but instead she's in it for serving her nation. Her self-discipline and excellent preparation for meetings and negotiations is apparently legendary. And this shows that I would say she scores high on a personality trait which psychologists call conscientiousness, that is, being careful, diligent, and efficient. Now, a conscientious leader is attractive because, as a voter, you know that this person will focus on the job. This person can be trusted with the job of looking after the nation well. Finally, I also would argue that Merkel appears to be a very friendly person. If you see her on television shows, she listens very clearly to people. I found that was actually, for somebody who is so high in political power, I mean, that is something that really I thought was almost unusual for her level of power, given that the public will understand that there is a difference between her and the average voter, but still she is a very humane person. Now, Trump and Merkel are not only opposites, they actually have met, and it's said that they did not go on, that they did not get on well, and it's probably not surprising, given that they have such different personalities. On a final note, I would say Trump probably reached the top because of his levels of verbal aggressiveness, his narcissism, and his use of humor. And of course, also because he was born in a wealthy family, which helped him to set the stage for his rise to the top. At the same time, I think his personality also meant his political success was short-lived. Trump's personality meant a quick turnover of staff with which he disagreed. And his personality meant he could not come to agreements easily. And in that way create a more stable government and a bigger coalition. It seemed that because of his character traits, it was difficult for him to deal with a completely shifted political landscape due to the pandemic.
Nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you witnessed, who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
The pandemic, generally speaking, required a different way of thinking. It required a high level of empathy for those who are hardest hit. It required more agreeableness with opponents to get support for a broad coalition of what to do in a nation in a coherent way. Ultimately, he didn't manage that, and as a result, not enough voters trusted him with dealing with the crisis. Now, in contrast to Trump, Merkel not only reached the summit, but she managed to stay there. She's been re-elected again and again and again. And I think that was because of her strong ability to deal with changing situations. she has survived and has been able to deal with numerous crises in her career. And I think her combined intelligence with the ability to listen and reach out have allowed her to make deals that helped her to stay at the top. The lesson seems to be that Trump's personality is not a good model for a long-term political career in a democracy. And that should be a lesson for aspiring leaders. Ultimately, being able to make compromises, being able to show empathy, and being able to change course when needed to deal with completely different and new challenges, they're key for democratic leaders who want to stay in power. What do you think? Leave your views below in the comments, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe to get more of this soon.